Hello, all you claustrophobic spies out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor.
A lot of those.
Probably. This is Undeclared Bajor, the best Star Trek DS9 discussion podcast on the internet. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
Hola. I like the implication that there may be some better podcasts, but they're not on the internet. So
They're like on old records, or
those are harder to get.
something. I don't know. We're better than those two. Don't worry. But today we're going to discuss Star Trek DS9 Season 7, Episode 3, Afterimage. Alternate title, Able Was I Ere I Saw Ezri.
Wow. You went a long way for that.
We will be discussing spoilers up through this episode, but not after this episode, so it is safe to watch the show along with us if this is your first experience with Star Trek DS9. But sometimes we spoil other books, TV shows, or movies because we're mean like that.
Yep. Because we can. Take that.
All right. While you were on vacation, I binge watched Ronald D. Moore's current show, For All Mankind,
Oh, how was that?
or the first 4 seasons. It's actually pretty good.
Nice.
Believe it or not, that Ronald D. Moore guy knows how to make a pretty good show.
Yeah, who knew, you know?
So,
I've been watching, on my chronological watch of all Star Trek things, I've just finished Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. And
how's that?
Season 2 of Strange New Worlds may quite possibly be the best single season of Star Trek that I have seen. It's just like, Season 1 was okay, and Season 2 was just, as the kids say, banger episode after banger episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the first couple of episodes of the first season, like the first 2 or 3,
Yeah.
but I was like, this, I don't know, this isn't really catching me, so I kind of let it go. But maybe I should revisit it.
I mean, I had to skip one of the Season 2 episodes on because my chronological rewatch order has that later because it's the crossover with Lower Decks, and so it's like we're gonna put that during the Lower Decks time period. But that's like one of the only 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds that I'd seen before I started watching through the whole thing. So, I'm okay with it.
Sure. So that's stuff we've watched. So we might spoil some of that.
Yep, entirely possible.
Like in For All Mankind, they go to Mars in season 3.
In Strange New Worlds, Spock dies. Not really.
Wow.
That would be unexpected, right?
Does he go to the Genesis planet again?
Yeah, it's like he gets Genesis multiple times. Who knew? Really?
Nice. Anyway, keeping with our trying to do the title review up front, what do you think about the title Afterimage for this episode?
I don't know that I feel like it fits. Or is clever. I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing what it's supposed to be referencing.
Well, I think it's just because everybody has this after image of Dax, right? So everybody's kind of dealing with that. Because after image is like when you look at something and you close your eyes and you can still see it, right?
Okay, I get it. Okay, maybe it's a little clever then.
Yeah. My only complaint with it is it sounds a little like sci-fi-y, and there's absolutely nothing sci-fi about this episode.
No, there really isn't.
Other than the general premise of how trills work. But
yeah. I don't know, for some reason Afterimage makes me think of like Memento. Maybe I'm just seeing like the pictures on the cover, like the multiple pictures.
It's like she's got a picture of Worf, and it's like, don't trust his lies. But, yeah. Afterimage originally aired October 14th, 1998. It was written by Renee Echevarria and directed by Les Landau. A couple of old Deep Space Nine pros.
This is the last episode of the series to be directed by Les Landau. So.
Oh, wow.
He out. See you later, man.
Well, that's another fun thing about watching For All Mankind is there's a lot of Deep Space Nine writers on it.
Nice.
Like, there's a lot of, I guess David Weddle and Bradley Thompson are still just out there writing episodes.
Good for them.
And there's one episode on Mars that takes place on the, it's like the Peckinpah Mesa. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
I wonder who came up with that.
I like that Ronald D. Moore is just like, hey, I know I can trust these guys, so I'm going to bring them in.
Sure.
Interesting note about the writing of this episode is that Renee Echevarria was scripting this episode before Nicole DeBoer shot any scenes for the previous 2 episodes. So, actually, he was halfway through the first draft before he even found out who was going to be playing Ezri.
Huh.
And as a result, like, it changed more from the original draft than you might think, but I'll get into that in a little bit later.
All right. And Sarah Clofton is in the episode for like 5 seconds.
Yep.
And so is Morn, who listens to Ezri muse about how strange it is that she's never been to Deep Space Nine, but everything seems so familiar.
One random note in here is that the shooting script ends with Ezri trying to explain to Morn who she is.
Yeah, Ezri and Morn don't really seem to connect at first, so
gotta get back around to that.
I kind of get the impression he was trying to get around her, and she just kept talking to him.
She just started talking like, "Oh, I know you. I love you,"
and he was like, "I'll just go the other way."
The thing about this bit is that with how talkative Morn is supposed to be, I totally don't buy that she finishes her whole spiel and she's like, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And that he's just gonna shrug and like walk away. I was like, he would say something.
Maybe Morn has laryngitis.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, there you go.
Or maybe he's so overwhelmed with Ezri's gift of gab that even he is left speechless.
It's just more impressive than ever how much she can talk.
Yep.
I guess we don't know how long she was talking to him before, like, we come into the scene.
Yeah, it could have been quite a while. We don't know. But Ezri takes a stroll down the promenade, stopping in her tracks when she sees the entrance to the Bajoran temple. She walks into the room where she died, which I imagine is also a strange experience.
Mm.
And then Dukat beams in and says, "Oh, hey, I need to use the orb again." No, that does not happen.
That would have been unexpected.
Actually, it's Kira who walks in, and then Ezri starts talking about how you never get used to dying, no matter how many times you do it. And then she asks Kira if she finds it a little weird talking to someone who has all of Jadzia's memories, and Kira is like, "Yeah, kind of."
Kira's like, "I came here to pray.
Right.
Can we have this conversation elsewhere?"
So, Ezri leaves and lets Kira get to her prayers. Ezri's next stop is Quarks, who leaps on the opportunity to unload some of his unsold stock of blood wine.
Nope,
but unfortunately, this new Dax does not like blood wine.
You know, after 2 lifetimes of enjoying that, it's probably time for a change.
And is Nicole DeBoer really left-handed? Was that?
I don't know. Hold on.
Was that invented by Renee Echevarria, or did they just put that in?
Let's see if anything online says anything about that. She is left-handed.
Oh, okay. So
wait, okay. Hold on. This website is called amiannoying.com and has various facts about this actress. Why she might be annoying. She was a vegetarian for 10 years. She is a smoker. She wore a padded bra because she says all Trek actresses were asked to wear them.
Uh-huh.
She went through a punk phase, but would not get a mohawk because she wanted to, quote, look pretty.
Huh. All right. That's kind of a weak punk phase, if you ask me, but...
She tried to hide her pierced nose from her mother. She settled for goth look with black clothes and black eye makeup. She says of her sexy Deep Space Nine outfit, it's tight and constricting around the neck and gets really hot and sweaty. Did she have a sexy Deep Space Nine outfit?
Doesn't she just wear a regular uniform?
Why she might not be annoying. She had an ill-fated, quote, experience with cow tipping. She is left-handed. She is an avid Trekkie. She is primarily known for playing a character who has spots that go all the way down.
I see.
Uh-huh. All right.
So is this entire website just about Nicole DeBoer?
No, it seems to be like different actresses or actors and why you might or might not find them annoying. I just happened to get to her page from Google.
Okay, I was going to say, that would be kind of weird. It already is kind of weird. So anyway, Quark seems jovial and asks Ezri if she's picked out her new quarters yet. But Ezri says she plans to go back to the USS Destiny and rejoin her post as assistant ship's counselor. Yeah, and then again, Quark is surprised to hear that she's a counselor.
Got to finish up that training in counseling.
Yeah. Quark suggests sticking around the station for a while and catching up with all her old friends. But he says it with kind of a pervy intonation.
Well, as Quark says everything.
Yeah, true. But Ezri says she doesn't think it's a good idea. People are probably not ready to get to know a new Dax quite so soon. But Ezri is surprised Quark is taking it so well, and he continues down his creepy path by reminiscing about all those late-night tango games, which reminds Ezri that Quark still owes her 10 strips of latinum.
I feel like we've established that you can't collect from previous lives. Or something. Or maybe you can. Yeah. The legal things seemed really murky, given like how many people tried to make her pay for things done in previous lives.
Yeah. But yet, thinking fast, Quark says, look who's over there. And Ezri turns to see Worf walking into the bar. Worf steps in, looks at Ezri, and then turns around 180 degrees and walks out. So, not super subtle. Up in his office, Captain Sisko hears the doorbell ring, but there's clearly nobody at the door. Well, not at the front door, anyway. He eventually figures out that the doorbell is coming from the rarely used side door to his office.
Yeah, how often do you see people coming through there?
I don't know if we've ever seen someone go through there. So, but it's Dax who wants to talk to Ben, but didn't want to risk running into Worf and Ops after the weird encounter in the bar. Sisko suggests that maybe Worf is just keeping his distance because he knows Joy and Trill aren't supposed to get involved with their previous spouses. But Ezri says Worf should know that they can at least talk to each other. I mean, she explained this to him when she was Jadzia. And then she goes and stares at Worf, who's just standing right there in full view of the door. And Ezri says she can tell he's in pain and reiterates her decision to return to the Destiny. Worf is just kind of like standing there, and she's like, he's in pain.
She knows why he's sad.
Back down in Quarks, Bashir, O'Brien, Odo, and Garrick are hanging out planning their holosuite Alamo recreation.
Odo seems kind of into it like this time. He's like, who am I again? Yeah.
Yeah, they come to the decision that Miles will be Crockett, Julian will be Travis, and Odo will be Santa Anna. So I guess nobody wants to be Jim Bowie. They ask Garrick if the costumes will be ready in time, and he's like, no, I'm busy with my Starfleet intelligence code-breaking work. You'll just have to make do without custom-tailored costumes.
Outrageous, quite frankly.
Besides, where am I going to get the raccoon skin for Davy Crockett's cap?
It's like, I mean, I could try using vole skin, but they're not nearly as fuzzy.
So I got lots of vole skin hanging around. As Garrick talks, a bunch of assholes are crowding around him, bumping into him and not paying attention. And Garrick rightly tells them off, which the others find odd for some reason.
It really was obnoxious with like the number of people like just whacking into the back of his head, basically. Yeah.
It's like, dude, are you for real? I'm right here. So Garrick goes back to his shop to work on his decryptions, but he starts hearing a pounding heartbeat. And then he starts having either a heart attack or an orgasm. It's hard to tell.
Or both.
Oh, true. Yeah. Odo walks in and just starts talking to him without seeming to notice what's going on or offering to help. And then Garrick collapses.
And then Odo's like, hey, dude, are you okay?
Odo's like, are you listening to me? Did you hear what I said? Sisko comes to the infirmary to check on Garrick, and Odo explains that he had a claustrophobic episode. Garrick reminds us of his claustrophobia, which we learned about in By Inferno's Light, and says for some reason it's been getting worse lately. He decides he needs to take some personal time to just sew for a while. So
As you do.
Good for Garrick. He knows when he needs to, take a break to take care of himself.
After you have a horrible attack, and that's when you really need that break.
Sisko asks Bashir if there's anything he can do for Garrick, and Bashir says, well, I guess I could erase all his memories. And Sisko's like, okay, never mind.
That's my go-to.
If only there was a competent behavioral health professional on this station.
Sigh, yep. Someday, maybe.
And then we cut to a scene that feels like it's from Twin Peaks, where we just come into the scene and Ezri is standing on her head and Ben is lying on the ground talking to her with no explanation at first. But we quickly learn that since getting joined, Ezri has had frequent urges to stand on her head, possibly tracing back to her previous host, Emily, who is a gymnast. So, I don't know if this was just like Nicole DeBoer wanting to show off that she can stand on her head, or...
Well, okay, so maybe this is where we get into... Okay. Originally, the draft of the script focused way more on Garak than on Ezri. So the idea was that Garak had gone on this super dangerous mission for Starfleet, and to avoid capture by the Jem'Hadar, he had to lock himself in a torpedo tube. And so then he gets back to Deep Space Nine, and he's being debriefed, and he suffers like a nervous breakdown from like this extended, claustrophobic situation he found himself in, and he forgets the information that he went through all that trouble to retrieve. And then they're like, "Oh man, we'll have to bring Ezri in here to like counsel him." And Renee Shavari is like, Ezri would have to be like this super effective counselor to like get through to him here. And the scenes between the two of them were going to be more about like therapy than about Ezri's character. But that was all before they cast Nicole and decided to kind of go this other way with the character, where she was like quirky and like standing on her head and all this crazy stuff. And so they were like, all right, the plot where she doesn't know what to do with herself and she's kind of like all over the place is kind of in direct conflict with this plot where she has to be a super effective therapist to manage to like help him.
Yeah.
So they were like, why don't we just like focus more on her being like, having trouble, being quirky, and then she'll kind of just stumble on the solution to Garak's problem, and that'll allow like her vulnerability with Garak will be what allows like this to come out. And so that was that was just part of the whole process of like, how do we make her all quirky?
On another note, didn't we establish one time that Garak's claustrophobia comes from like a time he was like taken prisoner and interrogated or something?
I don't remember that, but it's possible.
I thought that's where he explained his claustrophobia came from the first time we learned about it, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, Ezri is standing on her head. Sisko wants her to counsel Garak, but she says she's only an assistant counselor, and she's not finished with her training program yet. And Ben counters, what can you learn in a training program that you haven't learned in 300 years of life? And it's like, I don't know, like professional skills for a job I've never had before?
Right, yeah.
Ezri asks why Bashir can't counsel Garak, and Ben is like, I'm just going to pretend you didn't suggest that.
Like, really? Is that even a question?
I thought you had all of Dax's memories. Back in Quark's, Quark comes up to Julian and basically says, hey, now that Dax is back, she's fair game again. And then Bashir is like, what are you talking about? She's pretty much a different person now. And Quark is like, close enough for me. Let the competition commence.
Bashir's like, no, you? And Quark is like, okay, less competition. Works for me.
But, he got under Bashir's skin with that.
Yep, a little bit.
So Ezri goes to Garak's shop to do some counseling. She tries relating to Garak by bringing up the subject of her space sickness, which she attributes to unresolved feelings of guilt for getting herself killed in a shuttle accident when she was Tarius.
Yeah, it's interesting that she's like, oh yeah, I feel so guilty about, dying.
I don't know.
All right.
Well, that's the point she's making, because Garak says, well, I mean, you can't really blame yourself for that. And she's like, yeah, I know. The mind isn't always rational. You have these feelings. And she asks Garak if there might be any trauma in his past involving enclosed spaces. And Garak says no, his father would have punished him if he was dumb enough to get trapped in an enclosed space. And Ezri says, well, how did he punish you? And Garak says, by locking me in a closet. And Ezri is like, Do you think maybe there's some connection between that and what you've been going through lately? And Garak is like, no, I don't really see what you're talking about.
I don't see any relation at all. What do you mean?
And then Ezri says, well, maybe getting punished made you feel guilty, and now you're feeling guilty and you're punishing yourself with claustrophobia. Just like me with my space sickness. We just gotta stop feeling guilty. But then Garrick starts feeling claustrophobic and Ezri starts feeling space sick, so they call the session there.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, everything has turned bad. Okay.
And then Ezri walks back to her quarters or whatever, but winds up bumping into Worf, who is cold towards her. Ezri calls Worf on it, and Worf says his wife died and went to Sto-vo-kor. He doesn't know Ezri, and he doesn't want to know Ezri. Later, Sisko stops by Ezri's quarters to tell her that Garrick seems to be feeling better and has gotten back to work, for which he credits Ezri's stellar counseling skills. And then she tells him about her encounter with Worf, and Ben offers to talk to him, but Ezri says, no, Worf is intimidated by you, which delights Sisko greatly.
Yeah, honestly, that was kind of messed up. I was like, oh, you're just dropping Worf's closest secrets out there now that you're not technically his wife anymore. That's messed up, dog.
Yeah, Ezri's just kind of blabbing stuff all over the place this episode.
As good medical professionals do in the future.
Oh, yeah.
We've learned.
She's like, oh, yeah, I'm a counselor now. I have to get extra gossipy about my patients. But Sisko says, well, you have every right to be here. In fact, I've been noticing that there's a little bit of a mental health situation around the station, and we could use a new counselor. The last guy had an existential breakdown after too many sessions with Chief O'Brien.
Yeah, like that was the last time we heard about that guy, right? when she was going to counsel Chief O'Brien. So
yeah, it's like, oh my god, it's so horrible.
Maybe he just died in the war,
got reassigned. Who knows? I like my version best. But Ezri points out that she's not a full counselor yet. But Sisko says he called Starfleet and got them to waive the remainder of her training. And he got her a promotion to boot.
Apparently Starfleet can just, get around requirements of, for medical professional licensure or whatever.
Sure, why not? I mean, let's be real. How real of a profession is counselor?
Wow.
According to these Starfleet people, probably. But yeah, Starfleet agrees that the mental health of the crew of this vital strategic outpost is best left in the hands of a half-trained counselor who is also going through an identity crisis.
I mean, better than nothing? Question mark?
I don't know. Nothing might be better. But Ezri says, no, the Worf thing is just too uncomfortable, so I'm going to leave. Then down at the Replomat, Ezri can't decide what to order, so super suave Julian swoops in and orders 2 Phenalian toddies. Hot. Bringing up the question, is there such a thing as a cold toddy? I've never heard of it.
I don't know toddies very well, so maybe?
I've only heard the phrase hot toddy. I've never heard toddy in any other context.
What is a toddy? Not a toddler. Okay, so let's see. A toddy is a drink that can be made with liquor, hot water, sugar, and spices. It can also refer to the sap of certain palm trees. As a drink, a hot toddy is a drink made with liquor, hot water, sugar, and spices, often rum, bourbon, or whiskey. Can be spiced with cloves or other flavors. Can be served to warm up after swimming in cold water, or to help with a cold. Okay, so it does sound like you're generally going to be... I thought maybe it's like Earl Grey hot, each person has a temperature, and when they say hot, the computer knows, oh, this is the temperature they want it at.
Sure. So there's regular hot, extra hot. It's like Nashville hot.
Now I want to see Bashir walk up to a replicator and be like, I want a drink, Nashville hot. And the replicator's like, are you sure?
Give me a Phenalian toddy. Nashville hot.
I want it Thai spicy. No.
I learned my lesson with that Nashville hot when I was in Nashville.
Oh, they don't mess around in Nashville.
Which I got the hot that was still two levels below their hottest, but it was still pretty hot. So, but yeah, Ezri and Julian sit down, and Julian looks at Ezri and says, wow, you have Jadzia's eyes. And Ezri's like, wait, you understand that we're not related, right? I'm not her daughter.
That literally makes no sense.
I mean, blue is just a really common Trill eye color. And then she asks Julian not to flirt with her because she doesn't know how to handle it, like Jadzia, who actually liked it. And then she reveals to Julian that if Worf hadn't come along, Jadzia would have gone with Julian. Well, unless she got a shot with Morn, but there's no taming that wild stallion.
Or, flaming stick guy from that one ship.
No, that guy is he's fun for like a weekend every once in a while, but he's not, he's not marriage material.
Or for a threesome with Morn.
Oh, yeah. But Julian is moved and holds Ezri's hand, and he says, "Wow, can you tell that to Quark, please?"
Yeah, I need to get one over on him.
And standing in the background, Worf sees Bashir and Ezri holding hands, and he does not seem pleased. But the sweet moment is interrupted when Bashir gets a call from Deputy Talpet, so you know that guy.
Sure, yeah.
That there's a medical emergency in the airlock. Or there will be a medical emergency when Garrick figures out how to open the door. So Bashir and Ezri rush to the airlock and find that Garrick is in there pounding on the outer door, or pretending to pound on it. I'm not 100% convinced that window actually has any glass in it.
I didn't notice, I guess.
But Ezri takes Garrick to the holosuite to watch a hologram sunset and do some breathing exercises. But Garrick is too aware that the sunset is an illusion and they're inside a holosuite. He worries that if he can't get his claustrophobia under control, he may have to leave the station. And he can't go back to Cardassia, and they don't want him on Bajor. And those are the only 2 planets in the galaxy.
Yeah, it's not like he could go to Earth or something and hang out and resolve codes. Okay, actually, I forgot to address that when it came up originally, but that got me. Where at the beginning of the episode, he's talking about these codes he's breaking, and it's like, I wrote the base for some of these codes, but it still takes me days to decipher even a single sentence. And I was like, there is no way that anything useful is coming out of you if you take days to decipher a single sentence, because it's like, do you know how many coded transmissions they probably send within Cardassian space in a day? And even if you're like, oh, let's just focus on messages from the high command or something, there's gotta be at least a dozen a day from the high command, with no way to know for sure which ones are important and which ones are hey, this ship take a rest and this other ship swap out with it or whatever.
Right.
I just can't see how anything useful is coming out of Garrick.
It's it's Goldar Heel's dinner order again.
Yeah, right. It took me 5 days, and it turns out it was I want Hasperat.
But yeah, in the meantime, Ezri says she's gotten Quark to leave the holosuite open for Garrick 26 hours a day.
Prophets be damned.
Yep.
All she had to do was give him a little wink, and he was like, yeah, whatever you say.
In the infirmary, Bashir removes something from Quark's ear, which it took me until my second viewing to realize is probably the tip of a feather.
Yeah, it's a piece of a feather. He was getting a tympanic tickle.
Right. Yeah. Quark remarks, never get a tympanic tickle from an amateur. Then Worf comes into the infirmary and pins Julian to the wall, and as Julian struggles hilariously ineffectively,
once again, Bashir is the worst person to take into any sort of fight.
Exactly. Worf warns him to stay away from Ezri and not to dishonor Jadzia's memory. And that goes for you too, Ferengi. And Worf is like, what did I do?
Quark, yes.
As he's holding the feather that he pulled out of his ear from his sex tickle or whatever.
I didn't do anything. Oh, man. Yeah, it's just, another wacky day around Deep Space Nine when you get assaulted by a superior officer for no reason.
Yep. This is just what happens when you serve with Worf.
I mean, it kind of seems that way, yeah.
Then Ezri hears some noise coming from Garrick's shop and walks in to find him seemingly tearing up clothes so he can sew them back together. Garrick says that his father believed in work and always made him do his chores, and Ezri says, okay, it seems like maybe there's some stuff we can explore there. But Garrick isn't having it. He goes on a big scathing tirade against Ezri, calling her a confused little girl not worthy of the name Dax. And then he tells her to get out of his shop before he says something unkind. So
that's a good Garrick bit. I mean, Garrick's not usually this ranting, frankly kind of cruel in this scene. I mean, you get what's going on. It's not like it's unreasonable. But then that last bit is very Garrick, where he's like, now go away before I say something unkind.
Garrick is never cruel. Helly is never cruel. That's a spoiler from the last episode of Severance.
Good to know. Okay.
So Ezri goes and cries for a little bit under the seizure sign on the promenade. And then she runs into the Bajoran temple for some privacy, but then she realizes where she is, and that seems to make things worse.
Yeah, as it probably should.
And then she goes to Ben's office and says, Garrick's right, I suck, I'm resigning from Starfleet. And Ben is like, oh, wah, I have 8 lifetimes of memories. And he suggests that maybe Ezri should just go back to Trill and be one of those people who lives in the caves and takes care of the symbionts. But she can't do that, because I'm pretty sure only unjoined Trills get to do that job.
Like, yeah, you're trying to make her do the one job she's not allowed to do. Like, stop being rude. Like, he really jumps to this tough love angle pretty quick.
Yeah, he's I don't know what's going on here, frankly, but he's like, yeah, you know what? You do suck. You're not worth the name of Dax or that uniform. Get out of my face. She's like,
yeah,
oh, man, everybody's being so mean today.
He's got that one moment where he's like, who cares if, like, Dax's 9th life was a total waste. Like, wow, damn, man.
It's like, I got suddenly joined, like, out of nowhere. I maybe just need to take it a year or two to figure myself out. It's like, no, you're not worthy.
I need something from you now, and
right.
Since you're not giving it to me, screw you.
And then Worf is in his quarters sharpening his sword when Chief O'Brien comes in with a bottle of blood wine.
I love Worf's like, oh, not again.
Yeah, he's like, we're doing this again? But O'Brien says that Julian wanted to make sure Worf knew that he wasn't trying to hit on Ezri, even though he clearly was.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Worf is confused and doesn't know how to accept Ezri while also honoring the memory of his wife, Jadzia.
Well, try not being a jerk.
Yeah.
How about that?
O'Brien is like, yeah, just maybe not being an asshole is a good start.
Yeah.
Or maybe you could go talk to Ezri and then see what Jadzia would have wanted you to do. And then Ezri goes by Garrick's shop and apologizes and tells him she's going back to Trill. And then she mentions that the Destiny is going to the front to fight the Cardassians at Calandra, which was identified as a good place to attack thanks to Garrick's decryption work. But Garrick is clearly disturbed by this and starts ranting about how his work is killing Cardassians. And he has started to believe that there can be no victory against the Dominion without the total destruction of Cardassia, and it's all his fault. And this sends him into a big freakout, and he collapses again. Later in the infirmary, after Garrick has calmed down, he admits to Ezri that maybe he had some mixed feelings about his work that he wasn't aware of or processing properly. And the claustrophobia was him giving himself an out from doing the work. But now he's back to himself and he knows the Dominion must be stopped, even if it means the destruction of his planet and people. And Ezri says, that's the spirit, which I thought was a little like tone deaf of her, but...
Yeah. Also, it's just like problem solved instantly. Everything's okay again.
Oh, good. You're better.
Yeah, it's kind of just part of the way that TV treats like psychology in general, because they don't have time for, right. How long these things actually take. They have to finish their story in like 30 minutes or an hour. So they're like, and then a magical fairy came down and revealed the deep hidden secret, and everything was okay after that.
Right.
And it's like, that's not.
It's like when Marge Simpson had the gambling addiction, and she's like, maybe I do have a gambling addiction. I'm going to have to spend a lot of time working on this. And Homer's like, no, just don't do it anymore.
Yeah, just stop.
And that's the end of that.
There's a note that says, Renee Ashvari was not entirely happy with how the episode turned out, saying, Ezri helps Garrick sort of by serendipity, and that gives her confidence. That was the intent, although I'm not sure we pulled it off. I talked to some professional therapists after they saw the episode, and they were like, that was just bunk. That was disappointing to hear that we'd missed the mark, but I still think it was a good introduction to Ezri.
Sure.
And so yes, as someone who was trained as a therapist, that was bunk.
But Garrick thanks Ezri for her help and asks if she's still planning on going back to Trill. And she says, no, I've just decided to stay in Starfleet. Okay. She's like, I don't know what my problem is. So Garrick thanks Ezri for her help and asks if she's planning to go back to Trill. And she says, no, I've decided to stay in Starfleet. Oh, shoot, I better go tell the captain.
There were, like, I called, and those super cushy, like, symbiote pool stirring jobs, there were none available. They were full up. There's a hiring freeze on for, like, Trill planetary government jobs, and so
it's like they all got offered buyouts. It's a whole thing. Like, I don't think I can. That's not something I need to be jumping into right now.
Yeah.
But up in Sisko's office, the captain reveals that he never sent her resignation to Starfleet, so I guess he was just messing with her.
I mean, he could have sent it later. If she actually got on a ship and went back to Trill, he could be like, "Oh, okay then."
But he says he wishes she would stay on D9, but she says no, the Worf situation is still too weird. But luckily, when she's packing, she gets a visit from Worf. He apologizes for being such an asshole and says he hopes she isn't leaving because of him. Jadzia wouldn't have wanted it that way. And just don't expect us to be super best friends right away.
I like the part where he's like, I think maybe I haven't treated you like Jadzia would have wanted. And she's like, yeah, no shit.
So everybody gathers in the wardroom to celebrate Ezri's promotion and joining the crew and show. Sisko says, look around, you are now responsible for the mental health of everyone in this room. And yes, that does include Chief O'Brien.
And she's like, oh no.
Let's start with the time I kept going to the future and witnessing my own death.
Yeah, that's where I ended with my previous therapist. Yeah. He left that next day.
And then I did die, and the me from the future came back and replaced me.
Yeah, and everything worked out, I guess.
Then Odo and Kira invite Ezri to dinner. Kira is desperate to have dinner with someone else who eats.
I mean, he's kind of fair, yeah.
Jake eyes Ezri and says, oh wow, she's cute, as if he didn't spend a whole episode with her last time.
Yeah, that was like, did we not notice this last time? In fact, I felt kind of like you were hitting on her a little bit last time, so...
But Ben says, she's 300 years too old for you. But Jake is like, please, I did it with a 1,000-year-old imagination vampire that one time. I can handle Ezri.
That's true, yeah. He has experience with older women, for sure.
This is kind of right up Jake's alley, when you think about it. Garrett congratulates Ezri, and he seems to be doing much better. Quark brings Ezri a plate of food, then he sees Worf and takes it back and runs off.
that was a good bit. Cause she, like, is Worf here? Good question. All right, let me just take that.
And then Ezri sees Worf standing across the room, and he smiles and raises a glass to her. It seems that Ezri Dax is here to stay, if you hadn't figured that out from her name being in the opening credits. The end.
Nah, she's going to leave next week. It's fine.
She's going to die exactly. She's going to be back in the Bajoran Temple next week. And then Ducat's just going to be
She keeps going back there. Like, she's just waiting for Ducat to show up.
Yeah, that'd be great if we just get a new Dax like every couple of episodes and the same thing keeps happening to her.
That'd be really messed up.
That's the way I would do it.
That's a Rick and Morty episode is what that is.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Okay, so there's a couple of quotes from Andrew J. Robinson about the episode. One of them, Garrick is a Cardassian, and I think of them as really working from the reptilian part of their brain. They're very suspicious when anyone tries to interfere or pry or get inside. They're very carefully constructed perimeters. So, although he's suffering from terrible anxiety that was affecting his breathing, he was driven to fence with Ezri, daring her to get inside of him and trying to stop her. But finally, his anxiety overwhelms him and he realizes he does need help. And in the end, he is grateful. So,
all right.
There's one, yeah. And then about this episode, he says, this was a difficult episode because I'm also somewhat claustrophobic and having to go to that place is always tough. It was a very emotional trip, but an important one, because it shows the passion Garrick has for his race and his planet, and the agony he's experiencing from having to betray them. Let's see. He's subconsciously blaming himself for the deaths of his countrymen. The way in which the writers tied that in with Garrick's claustrophobia was superb, and it made the episode that much more interesting to do. I also like how they set up the relationship between the older, experienced spy master and the young, inexperienced counselor. That was a lot of fun.
I don't know if superb is the word I'd use, but...
I mean, it's okay. And then the last note I have is Ira Stephen Bear is talking about introducing Ezri. It's like, okay, so obviously this episode was to, introduce Ezri. We knew we had to be bold and not just try to sneak her into the show. maybe we could have if this had been season 2 or 3, but by this point we only had one season, so we just had to go for it. I like the idea that if Jadzia died and this was season 3, they'd be like, just slip her in there somewhere, it's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, just to have her show up and we'll develop the character later.
But yeah, that's all the notes that were in there.
All right. So ready to review the episode?
Yeah, I think so.
So what do you think of this episode, Afterimage?
Okay, so I've got good and bad here.
Sure.
I've mentioned before, I love Ezri, and I like this. This is really getting to showcase her and the wacky, like, the standing on the head and the, like, talking about, like, I don't even know what to eat because all of my previous hosts like these things. I don't know what I like. Like, I enjoy all of that, and I like seeing her get to play and with the character and kind of discover it. This feels very much like an episode that is here because it had to happen. Like, they're like, well, we have to introduce Ezri in some way, and she's the counselor, so we need it to be like a counseling thing. I will give them some credit for going, okay, how does a counselor, like, fit in naturally with things that we've established in the show already? And they're like, oh, we've established that Garrick has this issue, so maybe that can come into play. It would almost be more par for the course if the show suddenly, out of nowhere, one of the characters had this psychological issue, and then, like, she fixes it in one episode and it goes away, never to be heard from again.
Uh-huh.
And so the fact that they actually put some thought into it and went, oh, hey, let's incorporate this thing we've already established, it still does feel a little bit like, and it suddenly is really bad for no reason because it needs to be for this episode, and then she fixes it and it goes away. But at least we're building on foundation that's already there and not just throwing new crap in. So I like that about it, but it just feels very much like there's nothing inspired about the episode. It's just like, well, we need a counseling thing. Okay, here's Garrick. We'll have the counseling thing related to his stuff. And then, of course, we have to fix it toward the end of the episode. And now we've established her. And we have to hit all of these beats. It's like, we gotta address the Worf thing. We can't leave that hanging. We got to address, like, Bashir and Quark and how they feel about the new Dax. It feels very paint by numbers, where it was like, this is a thing that we're gonna have to put in the show. So let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. And they don't take it anywhere particularly unexpected or interesting or, like, it doesn't stand out in any way. It's just like, it had to happen, and they did an okay job making it happen, so fine. So there's some good stuff and some bad stuff. Worf is still acting like a child, and I'm not impressed by that, but that's been him for a while. Like, ever since Dax died, he's just ridiculously immature about everything, and so it's not surprising at this point. It's just frustrating. And I want to blame Quark for being all gross, but Quark is always all gross, so it's not like it wasn't something you would expect. I want to blame Bashir for, after being like, what? No, that's a totally different person. I don't even know her. Why would I want to come on to her? And then he remembers, oh, I come on to every woman, regardless of how long she's been on the station. So yeah, let's give it a shot. Sisko goes from, like, 0 to extreme tough love, like, real quick and almost out of nowhere. And it feels a little bit weird, but once again, it's just like, this is a point we had to get to. She can't lean on Sisko. She's got to, like, deal with it herself. So let's just get there. Yeah, I like it fine. And like I said, I like the Ezri stuff. So I'd give it, like, I guess a lieutenant commander. It's going to be above the line. It's just, there's nothing, like, standout good about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's not, like, it's a pretty clear, like, workhorse episode. It's not, like, it doesn't even really feel like a story all that much. It's just more, it's like, it's kind of like, you know, taking the new puppy and letting all the other pets kind of get used to it or whatever. I think the best aspect of the episode is Nicole DeBoer and her, like, performance. I think she does a pretty good job, like, playing Ezri, like, Ezri figuring out kind of, like, what she wants and what's going on, and also kind of figuring out how to assert herself as much as she can and stuff like that. So I think all that aspect of it is pretty good. But yeah, the rest is just kind of like, it's not like, oh, remember that time that Ezri and Bashir flirted that one time or whatever.
Yeah.
And as for the Garrick part, like, I approve of the message that, sometimes, despite your best efforts, your mental health isn't 100%, and you need like it's hard to be comfortable wanting to like reach out and get help sometimes. Like, I went through a mental health issue last year, although I was not at all reluctant to get help. I was desperate for help because I was going crazy, but it's like, I don't know. It's just a weird place being in this position where you're not in control of your own mind and you don't necessarily know what's happening to you. So like, it's good to show that, and it doesn't mean that you're like, you've gone crazy or you've gotten broken or something. It's, you have like a health issue and you need to seek treatment or whatever. So,
but not from Bashir.
Right. Yeah. Not from Bashir. Apparently from Ezri. Yeah. The actual like therapy between her and Garrick, I agree, is pretty ridiculous and hokey, but whatever. Let's see. What else is there worth mentioning in this episode? Yeah, I guess there isn't much else about the episode, but yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. It's pretty much a lieutenant commander. Like, it's just an episode that they had to have, and they did a pretty good job of it. I've said before, Renee Ashvari is pretty good at like cutting to the emotional heart of things. And I think, like, even though those parts were kind of brief, like the parts between Ezri and Worf were kind of brief, they kind of like I said, cut to the heart of what was going on. Like,
yeah,
Worf just got back from this mission to get his wife into heaven, and now this person is walking around with his wife's memories. That can mess with you a little bit. So
that's true. Although at the same time, it's like, you did know she was a joined Trill,
right?
Like, this was gonna happen. I mean, maybe you didn't expect it like right in your face so fast, but
yeah, this is kind of consistent with Worf, whose like emotional intelligence has never really been his strong suit, and
yeah.
He tends to process through things in a way that people around him kind of become collateral damage. So
that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Lieutenant Commander. It's just the thing. It's just the thing that it had to be. But let's see. You have any final thoughts before we wrap that up?
No. I was going to say something, and I was like, "No, that's kind of a spoiler for later." So never mind.
Yeah.
Let's just
we don't spoil Deep Space Nine. We only spoil every other thing.
Right. I'm hoping that we do more better with Ezri as we continue through this final season.
I think Ezri has had a pretty strong start. Like,
I mean, it could have been a lot worse. That's for sure. Like, she's had some decent stuff here. Not great or amazing, but like decent. The
way Nicole DeBoer has just kind of like taken charge of the character, it just really, I'm kind of impressed. So
okay,
that part's pretty good. Yeah, so that's our discussion of Afterimage. Thanks for listening. If you like that discussion, maybe you'll like our discussion of, I wanted to get something that was like, had the word before in it or something. Maybe go back and watch that other Garrick Claustrophobia episode, which I believe was By Inferno's Light.
Yeah, the second one of that two-parter. I think By Inferno's Light is right, yeah.
Which you can find wherever you're listening to this. All our past episodes should be there, unless some weird thing happened. Like, I think at one point, Apple or one of the platforms was limiting our episodes to 100, and I had to go turn that off. But you can find all our past episodes, maybe future episodes if you're listening to the future, wherever you're listening to this. And there's also the YouTube version, and you can go on that and leave comments, and we might read them and reply to them. Or we might ignore them. Who knows?
One of those two will probably happen.
I'd say almost certainly one of those two will happen. But my name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Adios.
We look forward to seeing you next week on Undeclared Bajor. But just remember, I get to be Davy Crockett.
I love the argument over Davy Crockett. Like, there's lots of good people to be, okay?
Yeah.
Also, I didn't even mention it at the time, but I love that, like, Odo is going to be Santa Anna, who, like, does not interact with these other characters in the simulation at all. So he's going to spend the entire time, like, alone with the Mexican army while Bashir and Miles, like, have their fun.
Maybe that's just the fun of how the game works. Like, one side tries to defend the Alamo, and the other side gets to be in charge of the army trying to take it.
I mean, that could be, it could be a fun game, for sure. I mean, it does just feel weird to me. It's like absolutely no human interaction on one side, but, you know, what are you going to do?